For decades, Man United were one of the most dangerous clubs in world football who would strike fear into billions across the world. However, over the past few years, a number of poor decisions on and off the field has led to a dramatic and embarrassing decline. But now, they're back. In just 1 year, Erik Ten Hag has taken the Red Devils from a team in despair, trophyless in half a decade, and turned them into one of the most dangerous sides in the world. And he's not done yet. This is the story of Erik Ten Hag's Man United rebuild. In 1878, Manchester was a cold, hard place to live. However, it would also be the year and place in which Newton Heath FC was founded, an event which would change life in the city forever. Now, I don't want to cover too much of Newton Heath's early history, as I will be doing a follow-up video on the topic quite soon. However, I still will cover some of the major events, with no year being more important to the image of the club than 1902. Entering the year, the side saw severe debts, being served the winding up order, leading to a takeover and change of name to Manchester United FC. The green and gold shirts turned into red ones, their stadium changed from Bank Street to Old Trafford, and very quickly the fortunes of the club turned around, where over the next 100 years the club won, and they won a lot. By the time Sir Alex Ferguson had retired in 2013, the Red Devils had won 20 league titles, 11 FA Cups, 5 League Cups, 3 Champions Leagues and so much more, securing themselves as the most successful team in British football history. But then everything changed. Manager after manager after manager was brought in and sacked, all the way through to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, where after finishing second in the Prem and Europa League in 2021, a huge summer spend including a homecoming for Cristiano Ronaldo would actually do more damage than good, with big losses to Liverpool, Man City and Watford seeing Ole being sacked. Ralf Rangnick was then appointed as interim manager until the end of the season, where he would then take up a consultancy role at the club, which in all fairness didn't start off too badly. One loss from 13 in the league had the Red Devils in the top 4, however then came a run of just 3 wins from their final 11, showing just how bad things had gotten at the club. Poor signings, loss after loss, a side which had no clear style was now a million miles away from the domination people had grown to expect at Old Trafford, and change was needed desperately.
The new manager of Manchester United, Erik Ten Hag. Erik, would you like to...
On the 16th of May 2022, Erik Ten Hag arrived in Manchester just a day after the season had ended and started working instantly for the next campaign. But before I get onto what Ten Hag actually did, let me first cover what was going wrong at Old Trafford. For so long, the club had essentially been run by Ed Woodward, who, to put it simply, didn't really know what he was doing, as we saw the Red Devils target big names rather than players and managers who could actually fit what they wanted to do. There were numerous players signed for far too much money and on extreme wages, making them harder to offload. And due to a constant change in manager, United always had a squad which was never really able to play any specific style, leading to the club's worst trophy drought since the 1980s by 2022. Ed Woodward would then depart the club before Ten Hag joined in the summer, with his role at the club being split up and filled by different people, most notably being John Murtough, who initially joined in 2021 as the club's first ever director of football. However, it was rumoured it was really Ed Woodward who stayed in charge until he left the club last year. Focusing back onto this season, and by the 30th of June, 10 players had already departed, among them being the likes of Paul Pogba, Jesse Lingard and Juan Mata. Fast forward a few weeks, and going into the opening day of the season, Tyrell Malacia, Christian Eriksen and Lisandro Martinez had all been brought in, with excitement having built up for an impressive pre-season. I'll focus more on tactics later, but to put it simply, over the previous 10 years United had played often dull and defensive football. However, the appointment of Erik Ten Hag was like a breath of fresh air at the club, bringing the high pressing, possession dominant style he'd played at Dutch giant Ajax. But the thing is, at first it simply didn't work. An opening day loss to Brighton was followed up by an embarrassing 4-0 defeat to Brentford, as Erik Ten Hag's Man United sat bottom of the table going into a huge clash against Liverpool. Everyone expected the Red Devils to lose, however 2 goals from Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford were enough to seal United's first win of the campaign, starting a run of just 3 defeats from their next 22 league matches, including incredible wins against Arsenal, Spurs, Man City and more importantly a fantastic run in the Europa League and League Cup, where after beating a strong Barcelona side, United would face up against Newcastle at Wembley in Erik Ten Hag's first attempt to end the Red Devils trophy drought.
Facing goal, St Maximo, stand over it. Shaw's ball in, the header is fantastic. To make it 2, it's Rashford driven wide. Rashford! That's it.
After winning the League Cup, United were going to reach the FA Cup final, narrowly losing out to Man City, as well as seeing a third place finish and progression in various areas throughout the season. However, that being said, there were still clear games that showed how much work Erik Ten Hag had to do over this summer. Now, before I cover the signings that are coming through the doors, let me first cover the tactics of Erik Ten Hag and just as importantly, those who came before him at Old Trafford. Under Jose Mourinho, Man United were a far more defensive team, often utilising long balls as their main method of progression, and due to various holes in the squad, it meant that no matter what starting 11 the Portuguese manager would select, there was always a weakness with how they would play. Whether it was a lack of width or poor defenders, meaning more cover was necessary in midfield, Mourinho's United consistently struggled in creating chances in the final third, and after a poor start to the 18-19 season, he would be sacked and replaced by Ole, whose teams had many problems of their own. The Norwegian would line Man United up in a 4-2-3-1, keeping them compact and hard to puncture in defensive situations, before utilising vicious counter-attacks with runners like Rashford and James latching onto balls through from Pogba and Bruno Fernandes. This system helped to get the best out of players at the club, however against sides who sat back and defended tightly, Man United simply didn't have the quality in their squad to break them down, leading to many embarrassing defeats to much worse sides. As well as this, when players who were more capable in possession-dominant teams were brought in, Ole failed to really integrate them into his squad, meaning the Red Devils were never really going to transform into a more proactive team under the Norwegian. Ralf Rangnick's time at the club was also nothing but a disaster, with his abrasive attitude and inability to implement his ideal style leading to his United side finishing 6th, as Rangnick himself would depart before he could even take up the consultancy role he was supposed to. However, as I mentioned, going into Ten Hag's first season, it seemed as if he transformed the squad in just one summer to a high-pressing one which played out from the back in a much slower, more intricate way than previously. 2 games into the season though, and it was clear that this squad still couldn't do that, so Ten Hag brought in both Casemiro and Antony, as well as changing the system the side used completely, reverting back to a more counter-attacking one. To start the season, United set up in a 4-3-3 with the aim being to play out from the back and pressing high as I covered earlier. However, David De Gea isn't good enough on the ball. United lacked a centre forward who was suitable for this role, and Fred found himself as the pivot. A huge issue as he's not a player able to progress play with his passing and is also often dispossessed, making him a trigger for opposition forwards to press. Putting it simply, this United side turned the ball over far too much whilst also failing to really progress it, essentially meaning that if the ball was in their defensive third, it was effectively a death wish. As well as this, when attacking, they utilised a high line. However, due to De Gea being a below average sweeper and Harry Maguire not exactly rapid, it meant forwards could play off the last line, allowing United to be hit on the counter even if they'd managed to get out of the initial phase of danger. And so, in order to take a huge step forward, Ten Hag realised he had to first take a smaller one back, reverting the side back into a mid-block as seen under Ole, with pressing taking place deeper in the pitch. The single pivot of Fred also changed to a double pivot of Casemiro and Eriksen, who not only offered better protection when defending, but also allowed them to progress the ball better, particularly because there was now more space in behind for Rashford to run into, meaning a more direct pass was now an option. Now over the season, this gradually changed into a more attacking system. Firstly, the departure of Ronaldo and signing of Weghorst meant United could now press more up the pitch, but also as the season went on, United started to have a lot more possession of the ball. This was because instead of sitting deep and creating room to run into when the opposition had the ball, they instead utilised the ability of Lisandro Martinez particularly to bait oppositions into a press, allowing them to create artificial transitions when they were in possession rather than relying on the risk that comes with allowing the opposition to have the ball so that they can attack. However, this of course is not the final phase of Ten Hag's United, and so what can we expect next season? Well, with the signing of Mason Mount and Andre Onana as well as the imminent arrival of Rasmus Højlund, we may just see United change style once again. Right now, this would be an ideal situation for the Man United of last season when they had possession deep in the pitch, with the space being in behind for the wingers to attack. This was largely due to De Gea not being comfortable on the ball or being aggressive when coming off his line. However, both Andre Onana and Rasmus Højlund will likely transform what this structure will look like massively next season. Instead of looking to create space here, Rasmus Højlund is likely to pin defenders back and force them to drop a little bit deeper, and with Onana able to carry the ball himself into areas further up the pitch, we could see United slowly start to instigate key moments further away from their goal, and likely target the space here instead in a more proactive manner. That could be through Højlund dropping deeper to help link up play, Jadon Sancho drifting inside, one of the midfielders pushing up as United look to stagger lines and so on, all of which would allow them to play a slower build-up style whilst also maintaining the transitional threat they currently possess and balls in behind if opponents risk playing a higher line to stop sequences like this from occurring. However, that being said, there is still a couple issues. Firstly, I do think another midfielder would be needed in order to progress the ball comfortably, as the likes of Mount, Casemiro, Fred and so on don't exactly profile ideally for the role that would be needed deeper in build-up play. As well as this, I'm not entirely confident that Rafael Varane is the man to partner Lisandro Martinez long term, not only because of his age and injury problems, but also because I don't think he defends large spaces at an elite level, and so we could still see potential weaknesses when they play a higher line. And so with all that being said, what should we expect from Man United this season and just generally in the future? Firstly, I need to make one thing clear, and that's that United will not be challenging for the title this season. I'd expect them to finish 3rd or 4th again, and as much as it may seem to many like it won't be a season of progress, the actual performances on the pitch will become far more controlled and should set United up for a very positive season in 24-25. Long term, they do have a lot of business to do with many key players reaching the end of their peak, but in terms of just stylistically, I think Man United could almost sit in between a peak Liverpool and Man City, in that they'll be incredible at attacking transitions but will also be a top level possession based side. And so even if I do think on paper it may seem as if United won't really progress next season, the Red Devils should be about to take a huge step closer to returning to the top of world football. For years, Man United were a dangerous side feared by many with an attacking identity partnered with a history of bringing through academy graduates, and under Erik Ten Hag I think it's fair to say that Man United are on their way back.